Hi everybody and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to sing when you're sick. And what I really want to do today is I'm going to debunk a couple of myths about what things can make you better when you are sick. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to warm up so that you can make sure that you have good healthy sound and some good healthy habits to do all the time, because remember, we are vocal athletes and we're going to try to make sure that we have treated our muscles and all the things that allow us to sing as if we are athletes taking care of our bodies, which is exactly what's happening, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about the things to avoid and the ways to have that healthy lifestyle that's just going to support our healthy singing. And then in the second half of our lesson today, I'm going to take you through some flexibility warm-ups, which I think are really great in addition to the healthy warm-ups that you need for singing when you're sick, because they are just going to help you get everything nice and agile, get everything nice and flexible. And it's kind of the same thing. We want to have that nice healthy mucus that's happening, and when you're singing for flexibility, it's similar, and it's going to give you that same kind of freedom in your vocal folds. So first of all, let's talk about a couple of the things that I often hear from people that they have tried or their choir teachers have told them, or what I like to talk about as dressing room talk, right? So those kind of like little gossipy things that there's always someone who's going to say, oh, I heard you need to take this, drink this, eat this, whatever. The first one that I always hear is that people are talking about is potato chips. And there's a whole group of things in the things that we try to use as like our urban singers myths of this is how you get your voice back and this is what I heard. And unfortunately, that's just not the way that the vocal folds work. So if you have gotten your voice to the point of absolute exhaustion because you've gone through, several months of rehearsal and you're exhausted and you're not taking care of yourselves, as we don't usually when we're in a show, you're not hydrating enough and you've just lost your voice. Maybe there's some kind of stage fog, maybe you're a smoker, all these things that contribute to you legitimately losing your voice, which is different from getting a cold and losing your voice. So if you have legitimately lost your voice, there is no way to repair that except with rest and hydration, because of the way that your voice is made in your body. So inside your throat, you actually have a separate tube, your trachea, which is where your vocal folds are stored. There's a sphincter, there's a valve at the top of that tube that's not going to let anything get in and fix your vocal folds. The only way that you can restore that is with lots of healthy hydration. So making sure that you are always, and not just in the week of the show, but always making sure that you are drinking your water, that your tea is decaffeinated, that you're getting lots of steam in the shower, that you're taking time to steam, that you're warming up properly, that you're doing all those things to restore that healthy mucus. What needs to happen inside your vocal folds is they need to be kind of like your hand. So if you touch your hand and you feel that the skin on the top of your hand is kind of loose and it can flow, sort of skate over your bones, that's what that top layer is on the top of your vocal folds. That needs to be loose. Now when it's inflamed, it stops it from being loose. We have to have nice healthy mucus inside there and a reduction of that inflammation as well. So both of those things require lots of water, and we want to make sure that we're getting lots of sleep, which of course we're not doing while we're in the middle of performances that take us until midnight or 12:30 in the morning, and then we have to get up to work our real jobs at 6 o'clock. So lots of rest, lots of hydration. And unfortunately, things like potato chips, apple cider vinegar, honey loquat syrup, and all of those things I love, those are really only for reducing the pain in your throat, which you could do honestly just by taking some Tylenol or something that's an anti-inflammatory. Now, some of the things that do genuinely work that are not just pain reducers, we want to use saline as much as possible. So one of the things that I do immediately if I start to feel any kind of congestion, I've got my saline spray, and I'm not using a medicated one. I'm just using a basic, I think it's like Ocean, and sometimes they have a generic that's called Air, A-Y-R. I want something that is just salt water and there's nothing else in there, because I don't want to artificially dry out my membranes. The problem is it's really easy to over dry those membranes, and once you feel that you're like okay to go ahead and start singing, you're going to over sing, and then you're going to end up damaging yourself even worse. So I want to make sure that I'm sticking with something that's as natural as possible. So I'm going to do 10 to 20 shots up each nostril in the shower as soon as I start feeling sick, to just try to get that sick mucus out of me. In the same vein, I'm going to use some kind of cough syrup that has an expectorant. So I like to use Robitussin, or I'll recommend the generic Tussin. That's one of the tricks that I learned from my opera singer teachers in my undergrad, was to use an expectorant, because we want to make sure that that cough is productive. So if you have that kind of like rattling cough, that can make you lose your voice just from the coughing, right? So if you can make sure that when you're coughing, if it's going to be productive, you're making sure you're getting that mucus, you're expelling that mucus from your chest as much as possible. If you find that it is not productive, then I'm switching over to a cough drop or something that I can continually be swallowing, so that I'm trying to get rid of that irritation without just raspy coughing that's just going to have that irritation. So if you think about, again, your hands can represent your vocal folds, and you feel how there's friction that happens when you rub them together. That's what's happening when we're talking anyway, but also when we're coughing and it's not productive. We're just creating this heat and this friction between them, especially if you have over-dried yourself by doing some kind of chemical, you're taking an antihistamine, or you're doing some kind of medication that has gotten rid of the healthy mucus that you have in there. That's just adding friction to those vocal folds, and it's giving the injury that's already there, it's inflaming it even more, and it's adding even more tension. What we want is, as if we had lotion on our hands, we want them to move and slip very easily between them, between each other. So that's why we want to have lots of water all the time, that we're steaming all the time, that we're just making sure that we're taking in that hydration as often as possible. So along those lines, when we're thinking about health for singers, we want to make sure that we are always exercising, and that's just a daily, even if it's just a walk, it's just retaining that stamina that's going to make sure that all of your muscles are working. We're not talking about exercising for losing weight. We're talking about just making sure that you can maintain healthy musculature, especially here, because a lot of the strain that we put on our bodies and our voice is from not supporting our speaking voice. So if we can make sure that we are exercising to, even just a minimum extent, just to make sure that your torso muscles are moving, that's going to help reduce any inflammation as you get closer to the end of or the start of your show. We're making sure that we have lots of nutrition, so that we're drinking juice, that we're eating green things, and that we're just, restoring that nutrition in our cells. We want to, obviously, one of the biggest things that your choir teacher probably told you, we want to avoid caffeine, and that is a real one. Anything that dries you out, we want to avoid as close, maybe around midday on the day that you're going to be performing. We want to get rid of all of that. Obviously, any kind of smoking, aside from the fact that it is going to give you cancer in the long term, any kind of smoking, think about the heat of that cigarette. It burns at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit, and that hot smoke is just like pouring boiling water over your vocal folds. So it's incredibly drying. It's incredibly bad. Anything that you smoke, even if it's secondhand smoke, that heat is just putting that drying quality over your vocal folds, and it's getting rid of your healthy mucus. We want that fold to be able to slip. So we want to avoid any kind of smoking, if for no other reason than to maintain your vocal health. Obviously, alcohol is a huge problem, because not only is it incredibly drying, but it makes you do things that you would not normally do. So you might be more willing to talk for long periods of time and late into the night and into the cold air and someplace where people are smoking. You might be loud when you're not normally loud. You might be shouting late at night. So all of those things with alcohol, those are all risks for us as vocal singers. So we don't want to get down that path. Let's talk a little bit about prescription medications. So I'm just going to talk about this briefly, because I am going to say that in 0 of my textbooks that I own, of the scientific journals that I read, of the other professional singers from the National Association of Teachers of Singers, 0 times have I heard people talking about taking prescription drugs to help your voice. Now, will a doctor prescribe them for you? Absolutely. Do they know necessarily what the effect of that is going to be beyond on, clearing up your symptoms of whatever sickness that you have? Do they know what the long-term effects of that are going to be on your vocal folds? Unless they're a vocal doctor, no. So please, I understand the tendency is to panic when you have a performance coming up and it's about to happen and you don't have any voice happening, but we've got to make sure that we don't do long-term damage. So prescription meds, there's no research on the use of oral steroids as a preventative or as a restorative for your voice. Any kind of shot, there's no research on that, on what that does for your vocal folds, aside from a quick stopgap measure. So I'm not excited about that. I am going to say neti pots are great, saltwater gargle, those have actually had studies on them and what they do for the vocal folds. So because both of those things can reduce inflammation and they can release the mucus, those are absolutely fantastic things for singers. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how to avoid losing your voice, and then I'm going to take you through my warm-ups quickly for how I get my voice getting going again when I'm feeling sick. We want to always, when we're talking, we want to make sure that we have breath support, and that's one of the biggest problems when you're in musical theater, is that we have to sing and we have to speak, and of course we have to dance sometimes, and it's really easy not to use all of this musculature. So making sure that we're always supporting this, and remembering during the day to keep your voice at a reasonable volume. So thinking again about the hands as the representation of the vocal folds, when you hit them together to make a loud clap, if you do that, you can feel there's a little bit of pain and pressure that happens on my palms. So in order to get that loud calling voice that I need for theater, I am doing that with my vocal folds. I'm banging them against each other with a great amount of pressure. Instead, if you can bring yourself down when you don't have to be projecting, bring yourself down to this kind of gentle pressure so that you're not adding any sound that you don't need to, especially when you're talking on your Bluetooth devices, because we have to speak up to get our devices to register our sound. We tend to overspeak in our cars when we're talking on the phone, right now when we're all on Zoom calls, when we're on WebEx, we're on whatever, when we're making our videos, as I'm doing, I can feel myself having to project. So being aware of it and bringing your volume back down and making sure that you are supporting your sound. We have to make sure that we warm up every single time and that we cool down. There is a vocal ligament in the middle of your vocal folds. So your vocal folds are not just like these flaps of skin. They're like several layers thick, and in the middle there is a ligament, and that needs to be warmed up and stretched. Otherwise, you're not able to thin out your vocal folds to get up to high pitches and to have the strength to get those loud noises. So if you sing without warming up, you're just gonna end up essentially pulling your hamstring. So that's a lot of the vocal injuries that I see, is people that didn't take the time, not warming up when you get to the theater. That is not sufficient. Doing a 5-minute warm-up, that's to help unify you with your cast. Your vocal warm-up is that's your responsibility as the curator of your own vocal health, is to make sure that you at home are warming yourself up 15 minutes in a position that you can be standing, that you can be healthy. That might happen in the morning when you're taking your shower, but that doesn't happen in the car when you're hunched over, when you're stressed out, when you're thinking about traffic. You're making sure that you have a full column of air, that your body is responding to what you're doing with your breath, that all of your musculature is kicked into gear. Let me make sure I'm not missing any of my points that I wanted to talk about. Last one, I want to talk about vocal naps, and I did talk about that a little bit on my page this week, but reminding yourself that if you are in a show, if you are feeling stressed out, making sure that you take that vocal nap, and that means an hour to 3 hours of zero talking if you can help it. So if you're home with your significant other, that means telling them, I'm on vocal rest, and being that kind of like diva person, and then just completely taking any kind of sound off of your vocal folds so that you can just repair them so that they have time to regenerate. Making sure that you're getting that water all through that time and that you're restoring everything. I think that is all of my, those are all of my points. Let me just double check. Support, connection, cooling down. Oh, last one. Okay, making sure that when you are singing with a mic that you don't go slip into lazy singing technique. It's really important to make sure that you are still putting in that forward placement, that you are still putting in that breast support and that diaphragm. Even if you have to bring your volume back, you should actually not be bringing your volume back. If they tell you to, as gently as you can, work with the sound designer to see, can they just bring your mic down? Can they stay on your levels? That's really what they're supposed to be doing. Because if you sing at like half volume, you're not able to always support it the way that you need to. So if you've been practicing all along, giving a certain kind of power, a certain kind of belt, certain kind of volume, and then they put the mics on you the week before, and all of a sudden you have to hold yourself back, you have to totally retrain yourself, and what happens a lot of times are injuries. So making sure that you are still singing with good technique, everything's forward, the body is involved, the body is engaged, and that your sound engineer is the one doing the modifications, not you from your throat. Last word, be wary if you are in a production that has stage fog, that you don't spend too much time in it. There's actually a major lawsuit with pit singers and pit musicians on Broadway and people that are in productions of the Magic Flute in the Metropolitan Opera because of stage fog and its effects on the vocal folds. So if you're in a production that is using a lot of stage fog and you're stuck like right in front of it, or you have many entrances where it's just blowing out right in your face and you're inhaling a lot of it, that can be extremely drying to your vocal folds, and it can be the source of flat out laryngitis. So we want to make sure that we're always in constant talk with the stage manager and the production manager and talking about how we can have the most healthy vocal experience for our singers. Okay, so that being said, when I got sick earlier this year, when I was in the middle of a production of Cabaret, I woke up in the morning and I had nothing left, which was not like me. I wasn't feeling any pain, I just had nothing. And so what I did, these are my warm-ups anyway on an ordinary day. I'm always going to start with an E. On that day, I couldn't even get any sound, so I'm going to start quite low. And if you want to do these with me, please go ahead. I'm going to cut these up later for you. But I am always going to start with an E because it's easy to get it out of the throat, out of the chest, keep it forward. And I'm going to start it low and I'm going to go down first. Making sure that I'm engaged with my diaphragm. Now if I got all of those notes out and they're working okay, I'm going to take a quick check up and down. Okay, sounding good. I'm going to go down one more time. Then I'm going to start doing some octaves. Switch into other vowels and make sure that I have control just in that limited octave over all of my 5 vowels. If I don't, I'm going to go back to raspberries. every single pitch is coming out. If I go through and I go E, and the second one cracks, start over. Now I'm also making sure that my voice is very forward, so I'm going to make sure I lift up my soft palate, and as I've said many times before, that means biting into an apple, that means smelling something wonderful, that means starting the feeling of a yawn. And I'm going to try to feel that right here behind my teeth. Everything forward, everything supported, everything lifted. I don't want to feel any pressure on my throat. So I'm going to start with the E's. If I can't get an E, I'm going to go to the bubbles. Once I have both of those working, I'm going to go to ah. Okay, that's working. Let's go to the octaves. Sure that every single pitch is there. I'm going to take water all the way through this, make sure that I'm hydrating, and then that's all I'm trying to do is, as we said, I'm trying to get that skin on top of my vocal folds, like the skin on top of my hand. I'm trying to get it to be able to slip freely. So I want that mucus, that healthy mucus, to be in production inside my vocal folds so that it's moving and slipping, and so that my vocal folds can go against each other. If there's anything I need to do to reduce inflammation, with that salt water gargle, with that hot steam, with that hot, I like to just do a cup of hot water, and because it does help with the pain, I will do a spoonful of honey loquat syrup and a spoonful of honey just for flavor, to try to just keep my throat lubricated as well. And then, you know, that's the time that if you do want to have potato chips, if your throat is sore, that can help with the pain, I suppose. But we want to just make sure that all of that is lubricated and coated and feeling good. And then I'm going to go through some octave jumps. Make sure that everything is nice and connected top to bottom. Now, if at any point any of this is starting to hurt, I'm going to stop completely. So on the weekend that I had bronchitis and I had to sing, I had about a day before that I really started getting sick and my voice was absolutely gone. I sang for 10 minutes in the morning. Nothing really came out. I drank a lot of tea. I rested for an hour. I sang for 10 minutes. More stuff came out. I drank a lot of tea. I rested for another hour. And then I just kept at it, and I kept at it, and I kept at it. And otherwise, I did not speak at all. And then I just tried to make sure I was hydrating and hydrating and hydrating. When I got to the theater that night, I made sure that my sound guy was amazing. He was always on my sliders. So when I was speaking, he had it cranked all the way up so I didn't have to put any pressure on my folds when I was doing my lines. And then he pulled it back down so that I could still be singing with full support, forward projection, and get it as loud as I could on my singing bowls. So let's move into, so now that, gosh, I've talked for almost half an hour. Let's do a couple of these flexibility exercises because I just think they're great and they kind of go along with our singing for vocal health. So I'm going to take you through, we've already done some octaves, but if we were going to do them quickly in 4 different vowels to make sure that everything is right. Taking it up. Anytime you feel like you can't get that vowel starting when you're sick, doing these flexibility exercises when you're well or you're sick, try starting them with some different nasal vowels or consonants. So if you want to put an N at the beginning, if you want to put an M at the beginning, sometimes those can help you get to your vowels better. So just a couple more agility exercises because they are great for when you're sick, just to get everything moving. I'm going to go through this one time and then I'm going to go back and repeat it, and you can have this to listen to and learn, but I'm going to do it right at tempo. So on an ooh, because that's a nice forward vowel. Ooh. As much as you can, and not having a lot of pressure on the sound is a great way to just get that mucus flowing, to keep it nice and fluid. We want to keep everything on the same stream of air, and that's a great way to connect to the body and the breath. So let's try it a little bit higher. Ooh. To make sure that I'm putting some attitude into the things that I sing, because by now, even if you're feeling sick, you should be feeling a little bit better and everything's feeling good. So I'm gonna hit this one. This is a riffing exercise that I like to use. Hey, 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 hey. Pop that right into your workout, and it wouldn't really affect anything because it's going down into that low part of your chest voice. Okay, and then last one that I want to share with you, this is one more riffing exercise, and I like this. It's because it starts out long and then we're going to keep shortening the phrases, and that's going to help us with our agility. The more agile that you're feeling, the more forward your placement is, the less pressure on your throat. So one of the things about singing sick that makes people that have classical training have the advantage is that we are taught to always have our breath support, our breath control, all of those things in line, and the musculature working. We are taught to always have our soft palates lifted and to always be singing with forward placement, which means that even if my throat hurts so bad that it hurts to talk, I can still sing usually without any pain. So it's finding that placement, and that's, if I can leave you with one thought for today, it's to get that into your body, that healthy placement for singing and for speaking all day long, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, making sure that you are singing well always. So making sure, am I starting to get tired after I've talked for a while? Then you're not supporting and you're not placing it as forward as it can be. So thinking about that good support and that good placement every time is key to making sure that you don't lose your voice in the first place and that you can still sing, if you have to, on a sore throat. Okay, so this one just sounds like this. Without any pain. Let me finish off the day today. We're a little bit over time, but I want to show you how singing good riffs can help you find your good placement. I'm gonna pull out a little Christina because I like that Christina Aguilera writes out her riffs, and so it's easy for me because I don't have a natural ear for that. Okay, so if I take a look at Bound to You, one of my favorite pieces, and I'm going to do it a little bit lower. So if I'm here, do I risk it all? Come this far just to fall, fall. From doing a riff, and I would encourage you to have a song like this in your pocket that you can just pop through a minute of it and go, am I in my placement? Is everything flowing? And your piece might be a Bach cantata that you love, but anything that you can do that you can get that placement, you can find that pocket, you can get all your notes on one stream of air, that's going to help you have healthy singing technique and make sure that you're not feeling strained after a long rehearsal. Guys, I hope that this gave you some insight into being able to sing when you're sick and to prevent yourself from losing your voice before you get sick. And then I hope that this helps you be singing in the middle of this quarantine so that if you're feeling any tension, if you're getting any sore throats, that you're still able to sing. Because I know when I can't, I feel just like a bird in a cage. So fly free today, you guys, and I will see you right back here on Thursday.